You can support this podcast on patreon.com/firstpawmedia.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Canadian Challenge Tales podcast. Our guest is Garrick Schmidt from right here in Saskatchewan. Garrick runs the Eagle Ridge Kennel and joined us this February for the 8-dog 100-mile race. Before we jump into the mushing, Garrick, can you tell us a little about yourself and your role as a land-based educator?
Definitely. Well, it's a pleasure to be on, Dan. I want to say Tante, Garrick Nasigasan, Libretto Chinia, Egua Ministikun, Ochinia. So my name is Garrick Schmidt, and I'm originally from Libret, but now I live in Ministikun Lake. So I've gone from being a Southerner to kind of fulfilling a dream over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years of moving north. But I am a land-based educator. I've been a full-time teacher for the last 4 years. I kind of started this whole land-based education, program, curriculum writing, I guess about 3 years ago. I think just trying to think so I had finished my internship, and my first job posting was out at Ochapowace First Nation, and I was able to kind of have full reign of my timetable, what kind of classes. We have to have our set classes that we teach throughout the year, throughout the semesters. But I was able to incorporate land-based education into that, and if I wanted to incorporate that into one class or all of my classes, I was able to. And what I had ended up doing was I took that and developed a program there where we went from maybe an afternoon or maybe a couple hours outside, where we were outside every other day. We would alternate our days, and then the second year that I was there, we ended up doing, I think, 4 weeks out on the land in total with different groups. We ran a block system there, and we'd start with the grade 6, 7s, and we'd alternate mornings and afternoons with those guys, but we'd be outside giving instruction on traditional teachings and land-based education for the full day. So I was teaching land-based and, I guess, core studies, core education, core curriculum for OCHAP for 2 years. And then this last year, I was teaching down a little further south at White Bear First Nations, where I was able to develop more of a program for high school students from grades 10, 11, and grades 10 to 12, where they were able to spend time outside, learn these traditional teachings, tie in protocol, tie in the ceremony, tie in the language, and they were still able to obtain credits that go towards their graduation. And I think we ended up having, it was a small grad class this year, but we had 3 grads, and I know there were a lot of significant changes, physically, emotionally, behaviorally, spiritually, all for positive, of course, but there were a lot of really good changes that came with incorporating and developing these programs in the South. And then the last couple of months, Kevin Lewis, him and I, we've partnered up, where my partner Megan, where her and I are now living and working with him at Kaniasa culture camps and facilitating land-based education there at the camp, but also the opportunity to go and travel together and facilitate camps for other nations, other schools, and then still do the partnership work that I do with Métis Nation Saskatchewan as well, and then run dogs on top of that.
Wow, that sounds like a full plate. Can you give people some idea, when you say land-based education, for those that don't know what that means? Can you tell a little more about what that is, or maybe some examples of what you're able to teach people?
Definitely. So with the mainstream education, when you're in your university program or your first couple of years of teaching, you think the mainstream curriculum is the end all and be all, and sometimes you need to break those barriers down and not completely scrap it, but change your mindset and the way of thinking. So I went through the SUNTEP education program and at the University of Regina, and that was through the Gabriel Dumont Institute. So we became experts in indigenizing curriculum, and with that, we have the curriculum that comes from the sky, from the stars, from the sun and from the moon and the land itself, from Turtle Island. And there's all these stories and all these teachings from the winged animals, from the four-legged, from the swimmers, and all of our ancestors and relatives that have passed on through all these stories that our people share seasonally. So, kind of what I do, and I know what a lot of other land-based educators do, we take the our traditions and our stories and our protocols and the activities that we have to do throughout each season, because not every you're not going to do things in the fall as that you would do in the winter, and the winter and the spring, or the summer and the fall, right? But what I do with designing curriculum or designing lessons or structures or camps, I'll take the traditional teachings and I'll have my indigenized goals, my outcomes, where I would like students, where I want their goals to be met, any adaptive dimension for any challenges that learners may come over, or I guess have to overcome over the course of a 4-week block, or whether it's a 5 or 6 day camp. And then once I have my traditional teachings kind of outlined and I know what I'm going to be doing, then I'll start implementing the mainstream core curriculum. But I always make sure to have our traditional teachings first, um, because all the other stuff that we can just um, add on later. Not like, I don't know. It's kind of tough to explain. But this last year, some examples too of land-based education are, I think, end of September, early October, when I was still teaching down in White Bear, we did a week-long hunting camp, harvesting camp, where I took students out, but there's all that pre-teaching that happens too before you do a camp of risk assessment, where you're camping, what it's going to look like, where you're sleeping. You're making sure that everything is taken care of. You have your checklists. There's a lot of good training too that we've taken over the years, through Outdoor Council of Canada, Paddle Canada, even Remote and Wilderness First Aid as well. But with the planning stages, you have to make sure that everything, you can plan for everything to go on schedule, but most of the time it doesn't. But we ended up going, and we were successful in harvesting a really big bull moose. I took 5 students out and showed the students how to cut and skin the animal, quarter it all up, and get it back to camp, to where we were able to hang the meat and kind of let it cool for a little while. And then from there, we dried meat. We took the rest of the meat as well, and we packaged it up. And uh, at the end of the camp, we ended up delivering it to all the elders in the community that can no longer hunt for themselves. So it's a part of that kinship, and that we say wogutuin, which is like relationship to all living and non-living things. But it's kind of, you're I don't know, almost paying it forward to like sharing what I've learned over my, I don't know, my young years so far. I'm only 31 right now, but sharing what I know how to do with our youth, and then from there, be for them to be able to give it back to the community members that have maybe tried to show them throughout um, their years or whatnot. So, and then two, we do a lot of canoeing, a lot of medicine harvesting, a lot of medicine picking in the spring and the summer and the fall. And then in the wintertime, we get into trapping. We had a little trap line this last winter. We had a few coyotes and foxes, beavers, muskrats, fishers come into our trap line, and being able to show the students with all the animals that we trapped or harvested with hunting camps that we don't let anything go to waste. We save absolutely everything from the animal, and there's always a use for it. Whether it's the hide and turning the hide into leather, or over the winter as well, we did a buffalo robe and we turned that into like a rug. And then to showing students how to tan beaver pelts, how to tan and skin lynx, wolves as well, how to skin those out and and tan those. But instead of using the commercial chemical tan, showing them the traditional brain tan and the smoking and all of those old teachings that some communities still do up north, but kind of seemed like a lot of the time it was kind of forgotten down in the south. So it was really nice to be able to bring those teachings back. And then even in the big thing too in the wintertime was the students that working with the dogs. They went from kind of being nervous to being comfortable running a team of 8 by their own. And like not just for a little like half a mile loop. I think by February or March, the students were running the dogs, I think about 15 miles, 20 miles by themselves, 6 or 8 dogs. And sometimes they'd have somebody in the sled, but to have all the traditional teachings there as well with the dogs and that working relationship with them as well.
Yeah, it sounds like the objective is to not lose this wealth of knowledge and information about the world, really. I mean, most would call it nature, but I would say the world, the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the techniques that have been used for generation upon generation that shouldn't be lost in a lot of cases, I think convenience, right? I mean, I think most would argue that the tan that you receive using the traditional methods you talked about versus the chemical version, is the end product the same? And is it simply easier to do the chemical side? Is that why people went that direction however many years ago? It's just really exciting to me. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Dad. But I think like for the chemical tan and the commercial tan, it's still a lot of work, and there's a high amount of skill and craft that goes into it. But they're having to output a high number of pelts or a high number of leathers in a short amount of time. Like it still takes a lot of work. But two, they're coming out with a really quality item once those furs are finished or once the leather is completed. But looking at it in a traditional scope or in an indigenous lens, there's nothing in the world that can beat a home brain tanned smoked moose hide or a smoked elk hide. Or even I did 2 wolves and a lynx at hide camp at Kevin's in April, and we smoked one of the wolf pelts, and like we've never seen what a smoked wolf or a smoked pelt, what that would look like or what that would do to the fur, the kind of change the composition of the skin on that's tanned. And other than just giving it that really nice smell, it changes the color, and then it kind of helps save that skin as well to make it the longevity of it as well.
Excellent. And so you talked about the moose hunt that you had and how some of the meat was shared with community members that may be no longer physically able to go out and gather for themselves. What about some of these hides that you're talking about? Are they also shared with community? Are they used to raise funds to grow the program? What happens to that portion?
So with the hides that we had harvested, like from the animals that we harvested this year, I showed the students from skinning all the way to getting it strung up on the stretching frame and scraping the hair follicles out, and then scraping the membrane side on the flesh side. What we had did was I think it was we kind of did it for a couple of weeks on and off, but just on the really really cold days this last winter, I showed students how to make rattles, and then we did a little bit of drum making as well. But with those sacred ceremonial items, we're not supposed to sell those things, so we gift those to our lodge keepers, to our elders, and then even to having those sweat lodges where the students were able to go and take their rattles into the lodge and get them blessed, and then for them to go into the lodge and sing songs or learn songs as well, and for them to have that sense of pride of, hey, like I made this, and um, now they're going and getting compliments on things that they've made. And then I think that was maybe January or February, we were gifted a bison robe, and I showed the students how to, from fleshing to brain tanning to softening and smoking. We did the whole thing on it, and it turned out absolutely beautiful. I know those kids are super 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 proud of the accomplishments that they did this last year, and um, I'm looking forward to, even though I'm not teaching there this next year, but I'm looking forward to going down and working with the school and working with my old students, because I know they're anticipating a hunting camp as soon as school starts in September. They're anticipating working with the dogs again this winter, so it's going to be busy, but I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. I'm sure that the kids are as well. Is this, you talked about a few different locations.
Mhm.
Is this something that's done just in a few of the communities that you're working with? Or is it more of a broader program where you're able to distribute some of this curriculum to the broad range of communities that we have, not just here in Saskatchewan, but across Canada?
So the last 3 years, I've kind of been locked in with working with the schools that I've signed contracts with, but now um, working with and partnering up with Kevin at his culture camp in Minnesota there. This, I guess, last week, I was at the Back to Batoche Festival, the 50th anniversary there, and we had harvested the first bison at the festival, not on site, but we had harvested it a little, I don't know, 20 minutes away, and brought it back and did a skinning demonstration. And then we put about 300 pounds of meat in a 4 foot pit, and we did a pit roast with all that bison meat, but showing participants, or I guess just festival goers, um, all the different stages of working on a hide. We had fresh hides, we had hides that needed to be scraped, we had hides that were in the finishing stages of softening and smoking, and it was really cool to be able to share what I know about hide work, and then even we were able to kind of showcase some of the hides and some of the pelts that we've done in the last few years as well. The buffalo robe, the wolves, lynx as well, and I know there's a few organizations around Regina. There's a few schools in Manitoba that are wanting to get some of the curriculum and some of the land-based practices at their schools and in their communities, and we're trying to work with them and go and facilitate some things as well. And so we're kind of, and then even with Batoche as well, making those connections with the MNBC, the Métis Nation of British Columbia. There's locals and presidents out there that want us to go and facilitate hike camps in BC, and so there's endless possibilities of going from BC to Manitoba or even Ontario or further, and then up into the territories as well. So it's just kind of um, continue to do good work, and then things I don't know, happen in a way.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's being set up in a way that you can help expand? Because, I mean, you only have so much time. There's no way that you can do every camp in Western Canada. You need to bring other people on board and help teach them all of the things that you've learned in setting all of this up,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds like a tremendous goal and task as you get into, even as you said, still in your early 30s. So you got lots of time to build on what we have,
Mm-hmm.
and grant really how many more children are able to experience that's what I see in the future for it, is just such a tremendous opportunity for more and more of the population to be able to experience that. And if there's ways that others can help, we will come back towards the end today, and we'll make sure that you can share with everyone how they can find you and how they can either come to participate, donate, volunteer, or
Mm-hmm.
perhaps connect in terms of their own community. That's a great place to end part one of our discussion with Garrick Schmidt and a lot of the detail he's been able to provide on land-based education. Anybody looking to get in touch with Garrick or participate in any way about the program he's been running, we'll have all the details in the show notes below. As well, you can find out information on the Canadian Challenge at canadianchallenge.com. We also can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, that information will be located below for you. Please join us next week when we have part two of our discussion with Garrick and detailing all of his mushing and some of the big plans he has coming up for this mushing season this winter. Thanks again. See you next time.
From First Paw Media, this is Canadian Challenge Tales. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your host is Dan Kirkup. Our executive producer is Robert Forto. Created for First Paw Media.